Today is day 2 of the Brian Walshe trial. I'm going to give you my daily recap. I'm also trying to put the baby down to bed right now. I'm watching her on the monitor, and it's turning out to be a struggle to multitask all of this. We have Harrison Schmidt still on the stand. He was the first witness. He was on the stand all day yesterday. We've been listening to the interviews with Brian Walshe, and they continue to play the remaining, I think he said there was about 10 minutes left in this interview. They are talking about Anna's schedule with her flights and what she had planned. He said that things changed. He thought she was flying back on the 3rd, so things were in motion. They do go back over his New Year's Day plans. This interview, by the way, is taking place on January 7th. You can hear a female voice, and that is his federal attorney for his federal case that he had, and her name is Attorney Minor. They go back to all the details of what he did on January 1st, how he met up with his mother, ran a bunch of errands, which errands he went to specifically. He confirmed that he went to Whole Foods and got milk and juice, and that he went to CVS and he got alcohol wipes for his mother. One of the questions that comes up, it's like peppered in very quickly, is, did you do anything to hurt your wife? And he says, no, I would never do that. And there were details yesterday that had come up about Anna having some conflict with one of her cousins over land that they both owned in Serbia, and he gives some details about that. But there's never at one point does he point the finger at one specific person or like one person who he thinks it could be. He just like points them in all different directions. The last question, he asked the officers if anything came of the search in the pool. They did the search, and then they actually drained the pool, and they said no, and the audio interview is over. There was something really weird where we learned about a ransom letter. We have a stipulation that's read by the judge, and apparently there was a ransom email from Richard Walker, like 788@gmail.com. There were 2 emails. It says, we have Anna, she messed up the deal. It was $127,000. blah, 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 about like her safe return. It turned out that the IP address went back to Nigeria. And at this point, we learned too that Brian Walshe was already in custody. So this really had nothing to do with Brian Walshe at all. It was just somebody who had seen it on the news. Things really start to heat up here with an interview on January 8th, okay? He is served with a search warrant first. So the police officers go to his house in Cohasset, serve him. He and his kids need to leave. They go to Attorney Minor's house, and they do an interview there. And present again there at this interview is Michael Proctor, a couple other, DeCecco, and then Harrison, and one other officer from Cohasset PD. They go over the timeline for the 4th time that's recorded of what he did on January 1st. And then out of nowhere, an officer asks, how do you explain at 4:54 a.m. there's a Google search, best 10 ways to dispose of a human body, and boom. They say this right after they say that it was on the iPad that Thomas was using. So they, I guess, had done the download off of Thomas's iPad, and based on whatever Apple ID was on there, this is what is coming up. And he says he has no idea. He was asleep at that time. He doesn't use that iPad. It was in Thomas's room with him. And then the sergeant goes on to say that there are dozens of searches on this iPad, and they go back to the police station, and that is when they get the warrant to arrest Brian Walshe. He's arrested around 4 p.m. And at that time, pictures of his hands were taken, and he had cuts on his thumb here and another cut on a finger here. While Brian Walshe is being booked, the officers go to Peabody, because in Peabody, they have learned that the trash that was collected from 2 dumpsters in Swampscott area where his mother lived had been brought back to Peabody, and they end up dumping them all out and doing an enormous search there for anything related to this case, like Anna, her belongings, etc. After dumping out tons of bags, they do find a bag that has some of the things that Brian explained that she was wearing when she left, or potentially left, the hunter boots. There is all kinds of personal items here, her Prada bag, and then we'll show you some more close-up pictures too. There's a close-up here. It's actually her This is her COVID vaccination card. It was super out of focus and blurry, so I wasn't able to see any of the details, but we get into some of the bank statements, and he's being questioned about these because they want to prove that all the activity on the accounts had stopped on 12/31 with the final things that she did. Like she said, she went to bar and the nail salon. Her IRA has about $93,000, and then there's another investment account that has over $100,000 in it. At this point, a judge reads another stipulation explaining that Brian Walshe has pled guilty to federal crimes, and what the details of that were. It was when he was selling the fake Andy Warhol paintings. We get to see cross-examination now of Harrison Schmidt done by attorney Tipton. That is Brian Walsh's defense attorney. This is the first that we see of him. I really like watching him. I get great vibes from him. I think he's doing everything he can with the limited amount of facts that he has, which is very limited. And I think he's doing a great job so far. The cross-exam starts about the federal case, saying that he had pled guilty to this and he had been forthcoming with that info to investigators on January 4th and 5th, and he says correct. About the iPad mini, they learned through the investigation, actually, that the searches were not done on that iPad mini that was Thomas's. It was just synced to it because of the Apple IDs. So that's why Brian was caught off guard so much when they asked about the searches being done on his son's iPads. When we get into the hole that's in the ceiling, he says, yeah, he showed you this hole. You saw it when you walked the property on the 4th or 5th, I think it was. And you saw the piece that was damaged. It was in the drawer. And he says it didn't appear that it had anything of value or blood stains or anything on it. So this is just a mystery to us. He probably did just fall through the ceiling. He's asked about the difference between I think it was Apple iMessage or Facebook Messenger. I guess there was some confusion on what of Anna's communication was coming through to Brian Walsh's iPhone. It was her Facebook Messenger, so he's trying to clear up a little bit that messages, like text messages about the affair, would not be coming through. He's saying that he wouldn't have seen text messages between William Fastow, that is the gentleman that she was having the affair with. He was also the real estate agent that sold the condo that she owned in the DC area. That was like $1 million condo. And he was forthcoming about the name William Fastow. He gave that up in the investigation in the early interviews. So his attorney is saying he wasn't trying to hide this person at all. The baby is asleep, if anyone is wondering. Look how adorable that is. Okay, our next witness is Trooper Guarino, and we recognize him from the Karen Reed case. He is the officer that had the hot mic moment where he said something to the effect of K-I-L-L me, and he has been on disability leave due to an injury that he had on the job. I'll get through a little bit of this, and then I'm sure I'm going to have to go to part 2. He is the one who got the search warrants for the contents of the iPad. The search warrants for the physical items came back from the search warrants that they executed on the home. So he got the contents of the iPad, the search warrants on January 10th, and he showed some images of all of the items that were collected. They have a lot of Apple products, multiple iPhones, iPads, and MacBooks. Popcorn break. This is the dining room. There are some of the devices here on the table. This is a picture from the search warrant, but these are some of the items that they collected. MacBooks. And then this was an iPhone SE that they talk about. This is one of the phones that the kids used. So after they show the images of all the items that were collected, they get into this huge multiple 100-page document of data that was collected from the download. The first thing that they go over is 10 ways to dispose of a dead body if you really need to. That was at 5:47 a.m. on January 1st. They start rolling. There's dozens of them. Popcorn choking. How long until a body starts to smell? How long for someone to get inheritance? How long does DNA last? Was done at 9:33 a.m. And they just go through all of the searches. They're about cleaning blood, cleaning DNA, about bodies decomposing. He talks about a serial killer he searched about a serial killer that put bodies in trash bags. I think he got some of the ideas from all of these searches. and go to part 2 now and we'll get into all of that.